Hello guys, welcome to London Players Guild. My name is Peter, I'm the guild master. It's a very vintage t-shirt I found and I decided to show off because today I am going back to a very old card game for me, a card game where it all properly started for me as a competitive player, which is Yu-Gi-Oh! And together with Scott we decided to go back into the game because a couple of fun structure decks came in. We each got a set, and I'm actually going to be doing opening for those structure decks. I haven't looked at the lists of the cards in them yet. And yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was my first competitive card game was actually Duel Masters, but the first one that I had, like, from the big three that I actually played competitively. I managed to score a couple of tops on nationals ages ago, 2011, 2012. And now I'm looking into getting back, although mostly as a not idle game, but a side game. There's Armed Dragon support, Hero support. Both me and Scott are big fans of GX era, so we're quite happy about that. And of course Charmers, the cute girls for Scott. So without further ado, I'll get into it. Well, first, the artwork of the 4 Charmers. It's a shame that I didn't include light and dark in here. I would like to see more of love for them, because I remember when they first came out, people thought that they're going to be really good, and they didn't do an awful lot with them. I don't think we even got the light spiritual art. Another thing with Charmers, with Yu-Gi-Oh! Structure decks altogether, that I quite like is the temper-proof seal. So you see, I opened it and there's no way to reseal it. As it happens in other card games, people will reseal the product just to try to get some quick buck. Starting with a playmat. I changed my camera setup a bit, so now I can actually look at the stuff I'm showing and I don't need to have it upside down, and you guys can see fairly well. So we have a paper mat. I always like the paper mats, they're quite cool. They grew a bit, I think. No, they're still the same. 2 extra monster zones, yeah. And cute little familiars of the Charmers sleeping and the Charmers looking at it. It would make an amazing actual rubber mat, and I think they were giving them away at some point. And here we have a promo pack. I didn't know that they come with promo packs. So, Familiar Possessed Win. You can special summon this card from your hand or deck by sending 1 Wind, a Wind Charmer, and 1 face-up Wind monster you control to the graveyard. So it's one of those summons you can do I'm grabbing my deck and summoning a monster from it, which is actually quite cool. And if it's summoned by its own effect, it gets piercing. So whenever it attacks a defense position monster, it deals piercing. It deals the difference between attack and defense into your opponent. And we have a Charmer token. So it's a 0/0 token with, I think that's a fire and earth. So Hita and Osa. I might be wrong. And then there's more trash. I think I opened it from the wrong side. I think I did. Okay, let's devastate the box a bit more. Please don't blame me. Okay. By the way, we got this some time ago and I just never got around to it. We got it from our local game store, the Brotherhood Games. Definitely you guys should give them a check if you don't have a local game store and you are based in UK. Now I'm struggling to find the opening. Oh, there we go. The opening in the plastic is always horrible to find. Okay. So, okay. God, what are you? That's such a small letters. Awakening of the Possessed, Nefarious Archfiend. Oh god. So you can special summon this card from your hand or deck by sending face-up spellcaster monster and 1 face-up level 4 or lower earth monster you control to the graveyard. So it can be, for example, 2 spellcasters, just 1 being earth. Or something like that. And you can summon it from deck as well, which is interesting thing. So you need to remember what you have in the deck. This is actually going to be quite problematic because you're going to go into declaring a summon and then you find that you don't have a summon card anymore. You can use each effect, each of the following effects of Nefarious Archfiend once per turn. When this card is special summoned by its effect, you can special summon level 4 or lower monster from your graveyard but negate its effect. Okay. And if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add Spiritual Earth Art card or Possessed Spell Trap from your deck to your hand. So you can still use it to link away and get additional effects. So by sacrificing 2 materials, you get to get 2 materials again, and you can go to another link and add a spell trap to your hand. And also, I love how they actually tell the stories in those cards, because this is the Nefarious Archfiend or whatever it was, and just keeps on growing up. We had another version of that. Awakening of the Possessed, Greater Inari Fire. So again, we had this as a level 2 monster, I think. Then we had it as a level 4, and now we have a level 5. And it's the same, you can special summon it from hand or deck by sending Spellcaster and level 4 or lower fire monster. And you can only use each effect of Awakening of the Possessed once per turn. But that means you can special summon it from the deck multiple times, if you have the materials. But it needs to be level 4 or lower, so it can't get itself. That's actually quite cool. So when summoned by its own effect, it inflicts damage to your opponent equal to the original attack of one monster you control. It's your choice. Oh, sorry, they control. Sorry, it's your choice. And if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you add Spiritual Fire Art or 1 Possessed Spell Trap. That's actually quite cool. But we only got 2 of those, so I haven't seen the Wind or Water one. I hope we get those as well, because that's actually a really cool thing. Grant Spiritual Art Ichirin. Okay, it's a field spell, so they got a field spell as well. Terraforming being limited is not making it easy to get. You could play Planet Pathfinder, but this is not Duel Links. And negate your opponent's first monster effect that resolves each turn while you control a spellcaster monster with 1500 defense. During your main phase, you can reveal 1 spellcaster monster from your hand, and if you do, add 1 monster with the same attribute, but with 1500 attack, 200 defense from your deck to your hand, and if you do that, shuffle the revealed card into your deck. Okay, so step by step. If you have a spellcaster with 1500 defense, which is all of the familiar possessed, the original charmers, etc., once per turn you negate the very first effect monster effect your opponent activates. It doesn't need to be monster on the field, which means you can negate hand trap. This is actually quite good. So you can stop Ash if you have familiar possessed or something like that on board. And then once per turn during your main phase, you can reveal any of the familiar possessed or charmers or whatever. And then you can find a monster with the same attribute, but it needs to be 1500 attack, 200 defense, which is the level 4 familiars that can special summon themselves from hand if you control a spellcaster, which is quite cool, because they also get to search something when they send from the field to the graveyard, and you can only use that effect once per turn, which is actually really cool field spell. Spirit Charmers. By the way, neither Spirit Charmers nor Grand Spiritual Art can be searched by the Awakening of the Possessed. Yeah, Awakening of the Possessed. By the level 5 monsters, which is sad, because you would want to be able to add those to your hand. So, it's a quick play spell. Discard 1 card, take 2 cards from your deck with different names from each other, that are Charmer monsters, Familiar Possessed monsters, so the level 4 ones, and or Possessed Spell Traps. Add 1 of them to your hand and set the other. You can only activate 1 Spirit Charmer per turn. So you can actually set a monster with this. So you can set one of the Charmers to match whatever your opponent has during their battle phase, and then they will attack into it, flipping it, and then you would take control of something, but then they would die, so you wouldn't be taking control of anything. It's still very cool, because you can set the monsters with this, and I actually need to read the Familiar Possessed Win. You can special summon this card from your hand by sending 1 face up. Okay, so you need to have them face up to get that. There is something to do here, possibly possibly with Invoked Engine? Because you can fusion using face downs. That would be something. Then we have, oh wow, it's actually foil. We have a reprint of Raigeki. So for people who don't know, Raigeki used to be banned for ages. When I was playing it was banned. We had Dark Hole. I think we had Dark Hole on 2. I think it's now on 3. I remember when Dark Hole came out from the ban list. But Dark Hole destroyed all monsters on both fields. Raigeki destroys only your opponent's monsters. And it's crazy to think that we are in a situation where this card is not banned anymore. I find it absolutely amazing. Sorry, I keep on checking my other screen to make sure that you guys can see. I think this is absolutely amazing, and we also get them in starter decks or structure decks. So Scott got 3 of those, so I'll probably nick 1 or 2 of them. Or probably 1 because it's limited. You can only play once. Possessed Partnership. So it's a possessed trap card, which you can search with the Awakening of the Possessed. Special summon 1 spellcaster monster with 1500 defense from your hand or graveyard in attack position. Or face down defense position. Okay, so either set the monster or summon it to attack. Then, if you control monsters with 2 or more different attributes, you can destroy 1 face-up card on the field. So after you summon, if you have monsters with 2 different attributes or more, so you normal summon 1 monster and then you set this, activate this, you can destroy 1 face-up card on the field. It's actually quite cool removal. And it fetches you a monster from the deck. It needs to be a spellcaster with exactly 1500 defense. I'm not sure how many of those are beside the Familiar Possessed and Charmers, but yeah, it's actually quite cool. Then you can banish this card from your graveyard. Then target 1 possessed continuous spell or trap in your graveyard, place it face up on your field. Wow. You can only use 1 effect per turn and only once that turn, so yeah, if you activate it, you can't banish it. But it's a really cool, and I assume that's all we have for new cards plus the Familiar Possessed win. So this is also on the artwork here we have them as the Familiar Possessed, which is cool because they use their Familiar's power. So essentially what's happening here, they are using their Familiar's power, and that's why they're Familiar Possessed. The Familiars are helping them by granting them power. I'm not actually sure if this is a new artwork or old one. I don't remember the original, because I know that's an old card, but I'm not sure if it's the original or not. So Possessed Partnership is actually quite interesting. I do like this. So we have the original Charmers, so all of them are the same. 500 attack, 1500 defense, level 3. On the flip, they target 1 monster of their attribute, take control of them while this card is face up on the field. They were never really good. 1500 defense is a bit too low, and if they die in that battle that they were flipped, you don't take control of the monster at all. Which is, yeah. So we have Osa, Area, Hita, and Win. Then we have Nefarious Archfiend Eater of Nefariousness. So this is the first of the upgraded familiars. It's a level 4, 1500 attack, 200 defense. You can only control 1 of them, they're all going to share that. If you control a spellcaster monster, you can special summon this from your hand. Again, they're all going to share that. And once per turn during your opponent's end phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can target face-up monster you control, destroy it, and if you do, special summon this card. So at the end of the turn, you can destroy 1 of your cards to make it come back. Triggering some effects, I guess, but I don't think this one is going to come in that often. It is Earth though, so it is necessary for the Familiar Awakening of the Possessed. Gigabyte. This one is again, you can have only 1 if you have the spellcaster. This one was played for a while. I don't remember in what deck, but there was a deck that was playing this because it was a level 4 water, and that was important in some way. Oh yeah, it was for Abyss Dweller. But yeah. When this card is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 monster with the same stats besides Gigabyte. So he can actually search for another familiar. Inari Fire is, the same thing. If you can have only 1, if you control a spellcaster, you can special summon this from your hand. Once per turn during your next standby phase, after this face-up card on the field was destroyed by a card effect, and sent to the graveyard, special summon it from your graveyard. So this actually keeps on coming back, but it needs to be destroyed by a card effect. Doesn't need to be destroyed by opponent's card effect. So this card is actually quite cool in Metal Foes. Sorry, getting quite dry here. If this is destroyed by Metal Foes, it will just come back during your next standby phase, which is pretty cool. I must say, this is actually quite cool. And it's a fire if we want to do something with Invoked, maybe? I'm not sure if Metal Foes care for that. Ranryu is the wind one, so yeah, they can have only one, special summon from hand. If this card is destroyed by battle card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can target one monster with this stats in your graveyard, except Ranryu, and special summon it. Again, it doesn't need to be destroyed by your card effect, so there is some synergy with self-destroying here. So if you destroy your own cards, you get additional skills here. It's quite cool. And now we go into a general support for monsters. Well, sorry. So we have Fairy Tail Sleeper. On the flip, you special summon one monster from your hand. And when your opponent activates a normal spell or trap card, you contribute one other monster. The activated effect becomes change one face-up monster your opponent controls to face-down defense position. And you can only use that effect once per turn. So, in other words, when you flip, it works because it's a flip effect here, right? So, it is something to do with the Chalmers. She's a spellcaster, so it works with the Possessed. It actually works with the Awakening of the Possessed as well, because she's a spellcaster and you can summon one of the smaller guys. It's quite cool. On the flip, you can summon anything from your hand. Doesn't check for a level for anything, you just summon. The problem is that she's not going to survive being attacked into, so you would need to force that flip. But if you do, when your opponent activates spell or trap, you can change that effect by tributing a monster. She gets flipped face down again. And if you tribute something, I don't know, like Sangan or I don't know. She tributes and doesn't destroy, so I don't think there's much synergy for Chalmers here. Rella. So yeah, Fairy Tail monsters, sorry, all of them are spellcasters. I think all of them are light. 1850 attack and 1000 defense. Neither player can target monsters on the field with spell cards or effects. Except this one. So whoever activates spell or traps that targets... Oh no, sorry, only spell cards that targets or effect of spell card that targets, it needs to target this one. And once per turn you can discard one spell. Equip one equip spell from your hand, deck or graveyard to this card, but return that equip spell to your hand during the end phase. That's actually quite cool. If we had Premature Burial, this card would be amazing. Because it would let you reuse your Premature Burials by discarding spells. Fairy Tail Luna. So it's another Fairy Tail monster. When this card is normal summoned, you can add Spellcaster with 1850. Oh yeah, she was played because you could search another one of her. And once per turn, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls. Your opponent can send one card with that monster's name from their deck or extra deck to the graveyard to negate this effect. So they need to send another copy of the same monster to the graveyard. And if you target an extra deck monster, good chances are that they don't have another one of those. But if they don't, you return both that card, this Fairy Tail, and the monster you targeted to hand. Which is, it was a scary removal. We have some Witchcrafter cards here, which is interesting. I know Witchcrafters became a thing, I don't know if they're good. When your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a spellcaster monsters you control or targets it for an attack, quick effect, you can target one card your opponent controls or one Witchcrafter spell in your graveyard. Special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, return that targeted card to the hand. You can only use this effect once per turn. Once per turn during your opponent's standby phase, return this card to the hand. So this keeps on coming back to hand, and when your opponents activate a card or effect that targets something you control, or is targeting your stuff for an attack, you can target one card your opponent controls, bounce it to hand, and summon this. Not necessarily need to target a Witchcrafter spell, but if you want to, you can target a Witchcrafter spell to get the spell back in hand. It's cool, I guess. Oh god, we have a Pendulum here. All earth, water, fire, and wind monsters you control gain 200 attack, or every different attribute among the monsters you control. For every different attribute among the monsters you control. Wait. Okay, so the basic 4 attributes, and for each attribute... Okay, so if you control 4 different ones, all of your basic attribute monsters get 800 attack and defense. This would be actually fairly good if it wasn't, the game is so fast as it is. I think for like casual kitchen table meta, this card would be amazing because it would make your Charmers at least 1700 defense. If this card is normal special summoned, you can choose 4 monsters from your deck, one of each basic attribute, then place them on top of your deck in any order, so you can stack the top of your deck if you really want to. Witch of the Black Forest, which used to be banned because it was strong, the same as Sangan, but it received, I think, the same errata. Yeah. So you can only use Witch of the Black Forest effect once per turn. And if she's sent from the field to the graveyard in any way, you add 1 monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand, but you cannot activate cards or the effects of cards with that name for the rest of this turn. So if you add something to the hand, you can't use it immediately. Which is a fair trade-off. I mean, Effect Veiler you can ditch from your hand. It's a very first hand trap we got, I think. Like a proper hand trap. During your opponent's main phase, you can ditch this from your hand and negate effects of 1 face-up effect monster and tuner. It's actually quite fun. Then Gosekka stops all of the set spells traps. Nice to see a reprint. And more of the Possessed support. Awakening of the Possessed. It's a continuous spell card. Monsters you control with gain 300 attack for each different attribute you control. So, again, it's the same type of a skill that the Riado has, but this one only gives attack. Charmer and Familiar Possessed monster you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. So, Dark Holes, Raigeki, and things like that won't destroy your monsters, which is cool, I guess. If a spellcaster monster with 1850 original attack is normal or special summoned to your field, you draw 1 card. And you can only do that once per turn. Which is... It works when it's special summoned, and you can special summon from the deck. So, yeah, I quite like that. A shame that you only get 1 Familiar Possessed. That's actually... unless there's more at the back, I haven't checked. Secret Village, because you play spellcasters in this deck, so it stops your opponent from activating spells if they don't have a spellcaster themselves. Spellbook of Knowledge, you can send to the graveyard either spellcaster monster you control or other spellbook card from your hand or face-up field, except another copy of Knowledge. If you do, you draw 2 cards. You can only activate this once per turn. So it's one of those cards where you ditch a card and draw 2. But you can also sacrifice a spellcaster on board, which is fine. Terraforming, which is limited, searches for field spell. Book of Eclipse, which flips the whole field face down. Twin Twisters! This is actually a really good reprint. I remember this card. I remember when the card came out. You discard 1 card and target 2 spell traps on the field and you can destroy them. It's really, really solid removal for back row. Although I think right now we have a Harpy Feather Duster, so forget I said anything. Dark Ruler No More is a really strong card that stops... if your opponent... Negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of this turn. Also for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, your opponent takes no damage. Neither player can activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. It's one of those cards when your opponent has set up a board with million negates, you negate their whole board, all of their monsters, and then your monsters can do whatever. And you can disassemble their board. But you can't kill them, because they take no damage. Unpossessed. A continuous trap card, which is a possessed trap card still. Charmer monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. If a familiar possessed monster you control attacks an opponent's monster, so it's one of those 1850 attacks, attacks an opponent's monster, it gains 800 attack during damage calculation only, so it becomes big. If a monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, while this card is already face up in your spell trap zone, you can special summon 1 spellcaster monster with 1500 defense from your deck whose attribute is different from at least one of those destroyed monsters' original attribute on the field. That's a mouthful. In attack position or face down defense position, you can only use this effect once per turn, so when you lose something, you get to special summon something. Yeah, again, doesn't say that it needs to be destroyed by opponent's card effect. It can be your card effect, which is nice. Spiritual Earth Art. So it's Spiritual Arts, the basic ones. The Earth, Water, Fire, and Wind. They all have the same. You need to tribute the monster of the attribute, and then you have an effect. Here you tribute an earth monster to special summon a level 4 or lower earth monster from your graveyard. Water looks at your opponent's hand and you discard one card from them. This card actually won me so many matches in my first nationals because I was playing frogs. Kurenai, so the fire 1, you inflict damage to your opponent equal to the monster's original attack. Miyabi spins a card to the bottom of your opponent's deck. Metaverse permanent. Oh no, wait, I'm thinking about the wrong one. Metaverse takes one field spell from your deck and either activates it or adds it to your hand, so you can just activate a field spell if you want to. D-Barrier declares you declare one monster type from between Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, and Pendulum. It's a shame that they didn't errata this card to include Link as well. So like the future mechanics, because I think it needed it. For the rest of this turn, neither player can special summon monsters of the declared type, also negate the effects of all monsters of that type while they are on the field. And you can only activate this once per turn, so if your opponent's deck depends on fusion summoning, you just stop them from fusion summoning, etc, etc. Solemn Warning, one of the Solemns where you pay 2000 life to negate a summon of a monster or a spell, trap, card, or a monster effect that is activated that includes an effect that special summons a monster. It can negate effects that have optional special summon. A notable one was Macrocosmos, which usually was played only to remove all the cards from the game. But because it said you can special summon Helios, Magus, whatever, the Helios monster, you could Solemn Warning it. And again, that's a very worthwhile thing to know. Oh, we have more Familiar Possessed, that's cool. So we have the Earth Familiar Possessed, which works the same as the Wind one. In that you can special summon it from hand or deck by sending the Earth Charmer and Earth Monster from your field to the graveyard, and special summon this card. With this card, this special summon by its effect, it deals piercing damage. Area works the same for water. And yeah, I think this is actually a new artwork. So that means that there should be 4 different artworks. And then we have Win. Yeah, we have original artwork, which is the non-foil, and then the foil one is the new artwork, which I really like. It's nice. And then we have some things that are advertising the new stuff. The Phantom Rage, which is the newest booster. Legacy of the Duel Links, Link Evolution, which is on Steam, Switch, yada yada. And of course Duel Links. You should play Duel Links because you're stuck at home and things like that. Yeah. So this is what you get. I think it's actually a really good starting point. The deck looks fun. It's not really very, very, very good. But if you get a couple of links, you get lots of good staples. You get Raigeki, you get Twin Twisters, Dark Ruler no more. So if you can grab 3 of those. I remember when Dark Ruler no more was like £10, £15 each. So it's a really nice reprint. D-Barrier is a good sideboard card. Twin Twisters, yeah, I already said that. And it looks like a fun deck to play. When the lockdown is finished, or maybe if me and Scott are really, really, really bored, we will get together and we have another deck that I'm going to be opening, a different video, so make sure to check that out. If you enjoy this type of stuff, I'm going to be opening more stuff because I'm getting into different card games. Just talking about cards, talking about some artworks. Like I remember Denko Sekka was absolutely amazing as an ultra rare. She was so beautiful. But yeah, I'm going to talk about the different stuff. So remember to like and subscribe so we can do more stuff like this for you guys. Also, we do stream on fairly regular basis, so make sure to check with us on twitch.tv/playersguild as we do play card games. And yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you around on the next one.